Okay, it's good to see people having a good old chat over a cup of coffee, and some of what we'll talk about this morning is about improving the way we all get on with better facilities here at All Saints. So I'm pretty sure we all know each other, so I won't go through introductions. But I did want to say before I start, the Big Build group, committee, if that's the right word, is a dozen of us. We can't all be here today, but we spent about 18 months working and researching, sort of on your behalf, but on behalf of All Saints, to work out what to do with that and what to do with this building going forward. Particularly for this morning's presentation, I'm very grateful to Simon Doran, to Alison Molden, to Steve Jones, and to Beverly for hours of help in putting this together. I was having a practice with this presentation with Liz, with my wife, yesterday evening, and she said you need to get the right balance of enthusiastic but not pushy. So if I'm pushy, then forgive me, and if I'm not enthusiastic, then let me know. So let's make sure this works. Magic, there you are. First of all, we're really excited to share our vision. So, as I said, you're only going to hear a couple of us talking up front here this morning, but a dozen of us have been working diligently on formulating a vision and then working out how we achieve it. I've started my timer. So, what's going to happen in the coming minutes? So, Beverly is going to reflect on what we can learn from our forebears, from those who worshipped here in the past. She touched on it in the sermon earlier. We'll look at what our identity, what our raison d'etre is as All Saints. And as we consider our vision for the future, we'll see that perhaps it's a vision which already exists. So we're on a journey with that vision. We're going to look at the things we must do, but we're also going to look at things we want to do, and perhaps that's the more inspiring part. But we want to look at the things that are good for us as a worshipping congregation, as God's family, the family of God here, but also things that serve the community, so things that link us to the people around here. We'll show you our plans, and we'll talk at the end about what each of us can do. But this is not about us telling you, all right? So this is about discussing, this is about answering questions, this is about telling me I'm wrong. Possibly. This is about achieving consensus, it's about winning support. So we want to leave here today feeling, yes, this is our vision. And please don't leave if you feel it's not your vision. Come and talk to one of us at the end, and we'll try and work things out. So we want to win your support. Beverly, your bit.
Yes, well, just very briefly, we touched on it, as Paddy said in our sermon. It's quite an interesting history here at All Saints. Every church has a very different history. I remember talking to Joe about that. Somewhere like St Nick's would have a very different history from ours. Maybe that church was built by the Lord of the Manor at the time. I don't know, but every church is different. But our church is very homegrown, actually, from the word go. It started with the generosity of St Nick's itself, who sent a curate up to the newly built Onslow Village to see if they could do something here to get a church congregation going. And so this, I mentioned, £20 was given to pay for a hut on the corner of Wilderness Road and Orchard Road. It's no longer there, but that was the first building here in Onslow Village. I think the first communion took place in 1923. Interesting, 100 years ago. And then after that, a few years later, 1927, the first building was purchased on this site. You can see it there. People used to refer to it as the Tin Hut. People like Jean and Tony, Sheila Kirkland, Margaret Arney, others remember that building very fondly. And in fact, I think in some ways they'd have been happy to keep it. But times were moving on. And that was given through, £1,000 was given by the vicar at the time to pay for that building. And then, of course, Tom New, isn't it interesting he popped up in the news sheet today, anniversary of his death? I thought it was very significant that his name came up today. He was a very inspired young man, as he was at the time, and he had led the vision to build a proper church on this site that would endure during the 1970s. 1960s, and the congregation, I was looking back today, they were given a gift of £4,000 by the church commissioners, and they raised all of the rest of it themselves to build this church for us. And then a bit later on, I'd forgotten, but in the 1990s, under Brian Coleman, who was the vicar at the time, the offices were built. Mike and Sarah, I don't know much about that. I might commission our church historian, who's here on the front row, see if we can find out a bit more about how the money was raised for the offices and the toilet. It would be interesting to know. It's been an ongoing generosity by congregations. And of course, we've been doing quite a lot. It's easy to forget what we've been doing over the last 10 years or so, the floor and the chairs. Interestingly, Paddy told me that we rent this building out now to the Prologue Drama Company 3 evenings a week, and the money they have paid in rent has now paid for the chairs. That's really interesting, isn't it? And also we can use this space for so many things. That's one of the things. We upgraded the sound system, you might remember. We can hear each other now. A few years ago we did the windows, we did the reading room, putting in a kitchen. We've actually done a lot ourselves, small steps. And I think that's what gives me confidence that we can now take a big step. Obviously it is a big step, but I feel we've been on a journey, as Paddy says, the journey that our forebears have been on, but that this is our time really now to step up into what I think will be a very exciting new chapter. So, is that okay? Tiny snippet.
Thank you, Beverly. So, I said we're on a journey with our visions. I don't know if you are aware what the vision for All Saints Church is before the Big Build project came along. So All Saints, we believe in deepening community, welcoming people, and growing disciples. So we believe in worshipping and learning, strengthening our faith, growing disciples, and then building up their faith. We believe in making people welcome as they come into this place, as they come into our community. We want to make them comfortable. We want to make them feel at home here. But we also want to play a role in the community, serving people's needs, looking for ways to witness. Now, if those three things sound familiar, hopefully they do, that may be because they're on the notice sheet that you pick up every Sunday, and they're on every order of service as well in this church. So that bit is not new. That should be the vision that you're very conscious of. But we're on a journey, as Beverly said, and I wanted just to show a few of the things which Beverly's already touched on. So, maintenance and management of this building. Robin leads the premises group at this church, and there is never nothing to do. There are walls to be painted, there are drains to be deblocked, there are roofs to be looked at, there's a field, there's a hall, there's always something, and inspirational leadership to do all of that. We upgraded the audio-visual facilities in this church to enhance our worship, to help our leaders, to help our learning, and to help our music. You might remember we upgraded the windows, the ground floor windows in this church. That was partly to be more environmentally friendly. It's partly to save money because we're not losing heat through the dreadful previous windows. Partly because they look better. We removed the pews and we put in chairs, and this has allowed us to worship in lots of different ways. We have the cafe style, we have smaller groups, and that's given us much more flexibility, more comfort, and as Beverly said, it's allowed youngsters from the community, but also choirs from the community, to come and use this space during the week, and that has then paid us back. So in fact, as the reading said this morning, you will be enriched in every way for your great generosity, which will produce thanksgiving to God through us. So, thank you for all the things that you've done, that we've done in this place before. We could also talk about eco-church, so looking after the environment, about being a responsible steward of God's creation, about having a silver standard in the eco-church scheme. We could talk about the reading room, the kitchenette in there, the carpets, the blinds, the flexible use of that space. And the flexible space is something we'll come back to. Let's not forget the field. We've done a lot in the field, or in particular, Carolyn and her army have done lots in the field. Not just for the events that we have, the autumn fair and the fireworks and so on, but clearing out the bottom of the field, planting an orchard, then planting some other beds, a wildflower meadow, a woodland walk. That's attracted not just families, it's attracted a school to use the field from time to time, and therefore we've put some gates on the exits to the field just to improve safety. So this is lots of evidence of what we're already doing and how it has involved how it has had involved the community. So let's talk about what we must do. Yes, I had a feeling that was there. Right. So I do hope you haven't been through the plastic screen recently, because it is condemned, everything the other side there. We have no choice. We can't sort of make good what's there. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner picture, there, that brick you can remove with your fingers. I don't know if I'm probably standing a bit too close to say that, but it's literally that bad. So we had been monitoring subsidence in tiny fractions for many years, and then just a few years ago, suddenly there was lots of movement, and something has to be done. So we can talk more about what's wrong with that if you really want to later on, but I'm not going to now. That has to be demolished. We've looked at lots of things we could do. We've had a number of different surveys. We've taken lots of professional advice. We must be safe. We also want to preserve the lovely oak tree that's out there as well. So we're going to lose 20% of our church space. So maybe you didn't use the chapel very often or the library very often. We're going to lose 20%. But we're a growing church in this diocese, and that's a wonderful thing. Is our vision that we shrink at the same time as we are growing? Don't think so. That's not my vision. It's not the vision of the Big Bill community. I don't think it tallies with the priorities I touched on earlier on. So we want to reclaim that 20%, basically over there, by expanding the foyer very significantly, doubling or slightly more than doubling the size of the foyer. We will have a better, bigger office with meeting space. We'll have not one but 3 toilets, and one of which will be accessible. And there'll be a kitchen there, a really well-equipped kitchen for catering purposes, not just to serve a cuppa, but will allow us, for example, to have harvest supper here with the catering just in the foyer right there. So all these things which I'm talking about, these need to be accessible. They need to be done sustainably, or as sustainably as we can. And we want to be efficient about it. So we're trying to think of that phrase again, flexible use of space. So we don't really want a space that is only used one day a week or for one thing. We want to make good use of space. So the chair's pretty busy now. We're going to have a new storage space behind where Carolyn is standing, so that we can put the chairs away and use the space more freely. So, the mission for the Big Build is to do more for this growing congregation. Our mission is to create a welcoming, sustainable, and flexible space that enhances worship, that serves all ages, and puts all saints at the heart of our community. Our vision is focused both, then, on the needs of this congregation and how we can serve and connect with the community better. And in case you think we're guessing on how we do that last bit, we visited 9 or 10 churches who have run building projects, and we downloaded their experience and said, what did you get right? What did you get wrong? What can we learn? How can we best do that? We also, in and around this church, we contacted 25 organisations and asked them what problems they see in this community, and if All Saints were doing some building work, which of those problems might we be able to address? So that's called a community audit. So our vision, therefore, is to renew the building, not just for me or just for you, to renew the building, to grow our loving church family and create new opportunities to serve people. The process I referred to of talking to 25 leaders in the community, that was called a community audit. And when we've had the formal bit of the presentation and we're happily clutching our Prosecco, if you want to know more about what a community audit is, or the specific feedback, then come and talk to me. I'll be wearing my badge, or to Joe, and we can explain what we learnt from 3 head teachers, from the manager of Dray Court, from guide and brownie leaders, from local businesses, from a doctor's surgery, from the Residents Association, from various other businesses. So we talked to lots of people. Okay, come and find out a bit more later on. So, things that are good for the congregation. Chairs and pews allow for different styles of worship in comfort and flexibility for all of us. The chair store, expandable space, allows us to make more of this big space here. Now, the back wall there, so under the clock, that wall will become a set of bifold doors. So if you can imagine no longer a great solid wall there'll be a very solid pair of beams holding it all up. But there'll be doors that we can open up into the new foyer. So there are about 10 occasions during the year, including the children's services, including Harvest Festival, including Remembrance Sunday, for example, when this church is properly full. And on those occasions, we can open up those doors and spill over into the space in the warm, light foyer there. So the community will benefit from this because they will also be able to use this space. The chairs will be away, and they can sing, or they can have their drama groups or whatever in this space. Let's talk about the foyer then. So you can look at it now and you think, yeah, it's a foyer. It's where we come in, it's where we go out. Someone said it's a corridor. You want to get in and get out as quickly as possible. We want that space to be more of a destination, a place where people go, a place where people sit, a place where they chat. Maybe when parents have their children in a ballet class in the hall, they come and sit in our lovely foyer and they have a cup of coffee because it's a nice space. The coffee's good, the Wi-Fi's free, and they start to feel at home at All Saints. So that space will be twice as big as it is now. It will be light, it will be warm, it will be welcoming. Now, one small point here. Let's talk about people. If you've been coming to this church for decades, many of us have, you may not realise, but we are a welcoming people. Some of the newer members of our congregation have said, such a welcoming people. Such an unwelcoming foyer. Really interesting. Oh, so have a look when you go out. Turn around, it's black, the door. It's a bit dingy when you get in. The floor's not carpeted, a bit cold. It's the way to get to the loo, and so on. We want to enhance all of that. Imagine someone's coming to your home. What do? You want to make them feel welcome. You want to make them feel comfortable. You want to give them a cup of tea. You want to help them feel that they're at home. Those are the things we should be doing here, and that's what we want to do in the foyer out there. We might have a little game later on to show you just how big that space will be. But practical things. So, 3 loos, one of which will be accessible, a catering kitchen with proper dishwashers, and the ability to host the events that I mentioned earlier. And of course, those could be, subject to our approval, events not for the church, but for other people in Onslow Village. Sorry, in the parish. We may therefore always have the post-service coffee here rather than traipsing down to the hall, or we could go down to the hall on occasions if we wanted to. The office that Trish is in every day of the week, or most days of the week, that will be better equipped. There'll be better meeting space, better enable us to manage All Saints. And by that I mean this building, the new building, the hall, the field, all the things that we do. There will also be better cupboards for the cleaner and for the flower arranging and that kind of thing. We're also going to put in a ramp or a path sloping down to the hall, or perhaps sloping up from the hall to the church, depending on your perspective. So again, if you're a mum with a pushchair, or you have someone in a wheelchair, for example, that will be the way to get to the hall and back. So our building will be more practical, more accessible, and more comfortable. So we think that's the next stage of our vision, and we think we're fulfilling the vision as we go along. So how will it look? We have ideas, we have architectural plans. Hopefully you've seen this in the foyer. It's been there for the last few months. It was also in the Ovra magazine earlier in the year. But of course, we'd like to talk later on if you want to point and ask about what's going on in the space. So there's that view of it. At the back of the church right now, there is a plan. There's the architectural looking down on it. But we also want to show a little 3D fly-through. Okay, here we go. So, this is the new part. So this is office, kitchen, loos. The lovely big doors, much bigger than the current doors. That entrance area is twice as big. Big skylights for the sun to pour through. So it'll be a much lighter space. So perhaps while we're looking at this one. So this corner here, just so we're all properly orientated, that corner there is behind the drum kit, behind the choir. Okay? So when I talked about the chair store, so that corner over there by the yes, by Carolyn. So we're going to use the funny space between the church and the reading room. And if you're not sure of the space I mean, have a look afterwards. We're going to kind of incorporate that into the building, and that's where we will be storing the chairs. Okay, so they'll be much tidier. They won't be sort of stacked up around the edge so often. So that's that part. So these are the bifold doors that I referred to here. So that's in that wall, but of course that wall will be longer, so it will go further towards that corner of the church. So roughly where that picture is, it'll go to over there somewhere, and that will be the foyer will be twice as wide and a bit longer than it is now, and we can have that closed off or we can open it up. Okay, so there is another fly through. So we've taken the roof off here, and what Simon's done is going to show us on the plan there. We're going to go up on top of it now. On a plan, what the area of that foyer looks like. So we're kind of zooming in here to look on top. So in the middle there is the kitchen. Sorry, why am I describing it? In the middle is the kitchen, that's there. There'll be a serving hatch here. 3 loos, 1, 2, 3, in that corner one accessible. That's the new office, a little bit more space so we can meet in there, not just have Trish based in there. 5 windows overlooking the car park. So that's the big space. Now, is it going to stop there? I think it is, yeah. So if you can probably see very faintly on here, some faint markings. So where I've got the laser pointer now, that's where the foyer ends right now, is there. So we're going to be more than twice as wide going over there. So these new parts to the building, this extends across the grass, nearly to the car park. So not to the car park, so there will be space for cars to park, as there is now, for the kind of bonnet to overhang the edge of the grass. Then there will be our new path, a ramp down to or up from the hall, path with a railing, of course, and then the building. Okay, so that's the space we're kind of bringing into our building. So by Simon's calculation, the enlarged space is about 1/3 of the space that we're in now added on. Okay. It's bigger than the reading room. The reading room has 20 chairs in it, in case you haven't counted recently. So lots of things we can do with that space. I'm going to very quickly go back, if I can, to the first video. This picture is showing the 20% of the current building that we're losing. So there are marks on the ground here to show what we're losing. And it is almost literally sinking into the clay. So we talked about what we want to do, a little bit about how we're going to do it. The new building, of course, will need heating. We'll want hot water, and heating a place like this, but an even bigger space, is quite challenging. Then you have to build into that our existing boiler has 5, maybe 6 years left to go. So we've got to be really conscious of how we heat and how we look after our buildings from that point of view. So we're making every effort to do that in a sustainable way. So we will at some stage remove the gas boiler. We are exploring the idea of thermal piling. Now, what that means is that as part of the foundations of the new building over there will be piles into the ground, and it is possible that they can also be a ground source heat. Is that a source of ground heat? Anyway, that they may also be a source of heat for this building. We're not sure yet, but Alison is very much on that project, and we would be quite an innovative church if we were able to do that. Might even attract some funding. You never know. Not just being an eco-church, but really trying to be sustainable as far as we possibly can. That will involve using sustainable materials wherever we can, for example. So, of course, project means time and project means money. So we've done about 18 months of work to get to where we are now. You've given generously, and we've spent some of that. We've had numerous surveys. Robin may be the best person to talk to you about the surveys. We've, of course, commissioned architects, several iterations of drawings, and we can look at those in more detail. We've also had our community audit. We've also met with advisors from the diocese. 2 of them, at separate meetings, have come to talk to us about how we raise money, how we get funding. So we've been quite thorough, we think, in researching this project. And we do believe, and particularly I'm encouraged so much by Beverly because she's done this in several other projects in the past, the funding is out there, the money is there. There are funds for community projects, for church projects. But to get that funding, they need to see our commitment. So that's really where we're going with this number this morning. £300,000. So, It's a lot of money. Let's not make any bones about it. £300,000, of course, is 100 people each giving £3,000. The maths is easy, but 100 people, there probably aren't 100 people who are all going to give us £3,000. So why £300,000? Let's look into that first of all. So, All Saints has already raised, we have already raised £50,000. That's what we've spent a lot of that on architects and surveyors and other experts. So we aim to raise a further 300. That's the number we're talking about this morning. The Surrey Community Fund recently gave £1 million to a church in Hazelmere for a project of theirs. And to do that funding, they require matched funding. That means that when we've proven that we're committed, that we've raised 350, there's a good chance that we will get 350 from them. Okay? On the right-hand side, the National Churches Fund, they give up to £100,000 for emergency repairs and up to £50,000 for putting a kitchen and toilets into main church buildings, not into a hall, but right here. Okay, so if your maths is any good, you might find that comes to £850,000. Before I explain why that amount, we have also identified a further 18 potential sources of funding. So this is partly our own research, partly with advice from the diocese, partly based on experience of Beverley in the past. So, as I said, we have faith that the money is out there. So, why so much money? To demolish that and build a wall, £80,000 to £100,000. Okay? And it's hard to believe, perhaps, but yes, that is what it will cost. So if our vision were to do nothing else, it would still cost us £80,000 to £100,000. Okay? We need to replace a boiler. Boiler, water, heating, ventilation, around £50,000. To turn the dead space here into usable space with all the roofing and heating and access and security that needs to go with that, around £50,000 to make this space more usable. Having subtracted those from the bigger sum, the rest of the foyer, so the big space with the big kitchen and the bigger office and the 3 loos, about £500,000. And then architects' fees, about 50, a contingency, about 100. So that's where the 850 comes from, or where it goes to, if you like. So, happy to talk more about numbers later on, if you'd like to. What can I do? What can all of us do? Well, Jeff Andrews, who's one of the diocesan advisors, who talks really compellingly about what projects can do for a church and for the community when the vision is right, he said, yeah, you've got to pray first. So I hope we've all been doing that. We've tried numerous ways to get that into our regular prayer. And these are all things that we would like from you. Prayer, your faith, your time, your money. Now, I've put support and feedback there. So feedback, don't bottle it up. If you don't like something, please come and talk to us about it, or help us explain what it is. If you're still unsure about how much you want to support this project, please come and talk to me or to Beverley or to one of us on the team. We'd rather there weren't people who were bottling up, some ill feeling towards the project, or sort of whispering about it and not airing their views. Come and talk to us, and let's see if we can achieve a consensus. We want to feel the whole congregation's support. So those are things we would like. Now, let's talk about the money. So, Yes, 100 people could each give £3,000. I don't mean to be glib about money. But we talked about the idea of a pyramid. This is not a hierarchy. It's not better to be at the top or the bottom, okay? But let's assume that we aren't going to find 100 people who each give £3,000. Some people, you may not be in a position to give any money. But we value your time and your prayers and your support. But of course, if there are people who aren't giving money, then some people will need to give some more money than that 3,000, for example, to achieve our target. So, for example, there might be someone in this room who could give £50,000. It's a huge number. But there might be someone right here who could do that. There might be someone with a legacy in their family, and they think this might be a great way to remember a relative. There might be people who can't give anything like that amount of money, but know they could give a chunk of money that would contribute to this project. So if that's the point of the pyramid picture, it's not more complicated than that. If there are lots of us giving smaller amounts, are there 1 or 2 or 3 or 6 of us giving much larger amounts? Okay? So, we touched earlier in the service about what tends to be called the widow's mite, about the woman who gave a couple of coins. We might be thinking that a lot of people need to put a few coins in for us to reach our target. True. But I don't think the widow's mite parable is saying every little helps or it all adds up. I think it's saying she gave all that she could. And that's why this begins and ends with prayer. So please, when you go away today, can you pray and think carefully about what you can give?